Coming up on the Paper Talk today, we're looking at Marcus Rashford, of course. Where would we be without a Marcus Rashford story? Also, Mason Greenwood. Could be a few twists in the tail on that one, so let's get into it. Jay here for Stretford Paddock. This is the Paper Talk. As you can see, I'm outside Old Trafford and it's pretty mild, you know. It's debatable whether you'll need your Parkers. Loads of stories to get through, so we'll crack on. Before we do, though, make sure you are hitting like, share, and subscribe. We want to get to 750,000 subscribers by the end of the season, and with your support, yes, you, we can get there. Lots of stories this morning, focusing on United strikers or attackers and where they're going to be next season. I'm going to start with Marcus Rashford, then we'll move on to Mason Greenwood. Now, with Marcus Rashford, it feels like there's a never-ending stream of Marcus Rashford stories. We had it yesterday. I think James Ducker in the Telegraph saying that basically everyone, barring Kobe Mainoo, Alejandro Garnacho and Rasmus Højlund, is up for sale, obviously, including Marcus Rashford. He's up for sale as well. So that was the sort of big news that we had. We covered it on the Paddock podcast yesterday, and it is a pretty big story that a player like Marcus Rashford, I think he's 26 years old, 30-goal season last season, one of United's biggest names, could be up for sale or is up for sale if the right offer comes in. However, it seems that might not be the case because David Ornstein tweeted out that Manchester United's preference is actually to keep Marcus Rashford and to work with him to get him back to his best form. He's not having the best season. We all know that. We know what's gone on. He's pushed back on some of the abuse he's received. He's saying it's not just criticism. We spoke about this last week. He said it's abuse. Let's call it what it is. He's pushed back on that. Then there's these stories circulating that maybe his future lies elsewhere. However, it seems that United's preference, according to Ornstein, who for me, well, I think for anyone, he's up there with the tier one-ist of the tier ones, saying that United would like to keep Marcus Rashford, which kind of makes sense. It makes even more sense when you look at some of the other stories circulating. Pete Hall in the i-News, I know Pete's a good guy, he's saying that PSG's interest in Marcus Rashford has actually cooled. It doesn't look like they're going to go for Rashford. There were reports and rumours and stories doing the rounds a few months ago that PSG were heavily interested in Marcus Rashford. They have been for some time. I think they've been interested in Rashford since the Thomas Tuchel days, since he scored against them, going back all those years ago under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And there's always been this feeling that if United were willing to sell Marcus Rashford, or if he wanted to leave, then Paris would be a good destination for him. He could probably get his wages covered there, the wages that he's on now. They'd come in with some big dough, and it'd be a league where you'd expect Marcus Rashford to do pretty well. However, it does seem that the PSG interest has cooled. They do need a replacement for Kylian Mbappe, who's going to be going to Real Madrid, but it seems that Marcus Rashford isn't top of their list. He might not even be on their list, according to what Pete Hall's saying in the i-News. It looks like they may be turning their attention to Victor Osimhen. So where does that leave Marcus Rashford? Well, as David Ornstein says, it leaves him at Manchester United. And the best thing for Manchester United to do is to try and get Marcus Rashford playing to his top level. Listen, when Marcus Rashford is on form, when he's playing well, he's as good as anyone on the planet. And people may go, oh, Jay, what are you on about? Look at his record. Look at the goals he scored. Look at who he scored against. He scored against all the top teams. That's not a bad footballer. There's never been a question of Marcus Rashford's ability. The question is about his form and whether he can do it consistently enough for Manchester United. Seems that Manchester United are determined to keep, are going to keep hold of him and try and work with him to get the best out of him. If Marcus Rashford is playing at his best, I think everyone's happy. And that's what I want to see. I want to see Marcus Rashford playing as well as he can play for Manchester United Football Club. Get involved in the chat in the comments and let me know what you think. Another attacker who might not be staying at Old Trafford, or he might be, depends who you read, is Mason Greenwood. Now, there's a report by, I think, Paul Hurst in the Times. Paul Hurst, know him, he's been on the channel. He's saying that Juventus are interested in Mason Greenwood. He's having a decent spell at Getafe. He's scored a few goals, got a few assists. Looks like he's getting career back on track. Now, Getafe doesn't look like they're going to be able to keep hold of him. I think they would like to, but I think they're probably beginning a bit priced out from what Manchester United would want to sign for them to sign Mason Greenwood on a permanent deal. He's obviously on loan there till the end of the season. Now, Juve apparently interested in him for around the £40 million mark. However, as Hurst says in his Times article, United haven't ruled out the possibility of bringing him back. We don't know what is going to happen with Mason Greenwood. I think there's always been these reports or rumours and conjecture that what Sir Jim Ratcliffe said, what other people have said, what does that mean? Sir Jim Ratcliffe mentioned the values of the club. We know why Mason Greenwood isn't playing for Manchester United right now. It's nothing to do with his ability. In terms of ability, Mason Greenwood is as good as any youngster I've ever seen come through this academy. And I'm old enough to remember seeing the likes of Ryan Giggs coming through this academy. I'm getting on a bit. So I've seen a lot of young players come through, and Mason Greenwood was lauded for a reason. He was a genuine I know Joe Smith hates this word, but it's true in this case, generational talent. He's that good. And we've seen it. I don't need to tell you that. You've all seen it. But we know why he's not playing. It's not anything to do why he's not playing for United. It's not anything to do with his abilities, what's going on off the pitch. And it's this sort of odd, for want of a better word, scenario that Manchester United find themselves in, where you've got a player that is still playing football, but can he come and play football for Manchester United? Some people say he could. Some people say he shouldn't. There was reports that he was going to come back to Manchester United, and you saw the outrage and the pushback on that from a lot of people, and that seemed to all at the club stance on it. Then we saw those statements that came out from the club, from Mason Greenwood, from Richard Arnold. Some of those statements I thought were absolutely awful statements, by the way, and I can't even believe they were approved. That's a different story anyway. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with Mason Greenwood. However, just to add another sort of twist to the tale, according to a couple of websites, including Team Talk, a Premier League club is interested in Mason Greenwood. Now, that doesn't surprise me, to be honest with you, because sometimes you can have this sort of, dare I say, slightly xenophobic approach that, well, he could go to Italy, they'll have him. Go to Spain, they'll have him. Why not Turkey, they'll have him. Well, is there any reason he could go to Juventus or he couldn't go to another Premier League club? Probably not. And I think if a Premier League club looks at Mason Greenwood and was saying, you know what, we think he could do a job for us, we're willing to accept him as the person he is and have him at our club, then he could go on and sign for a Premier League club if they pay Manchester United the money that Manchester United want. The only sort of slight twist in that might be that Manchester United are reluctant to let him go to a Premier League club in case he does really well. Bit of FOMO. Oh, we've let him go there, he's smashed it, he's banging in goals every week in the Premier League, it's left up with his egg on our face. I don't know. Let me know what you think. It's a very sort of emotive subject in it with Mason Greenwood. It's not all just about his footballing ability. It's about what's going on. And even that, to a lot of people, isn't as black and white as it is to others. Some people debate that as well. So you let me know what you think, but just keep it respectful. You know what I'm on about. Right, another story doing the rounds. Scott McTominay spoken about his injury, said it was a bit of hyperextension, probably not as serious as was first feared. When we saw him hit the deck against Burnley, Scott McTominay is not the type of player that you would see just get, stretch it off or leave the pitch without good reason. I feared the worst when I saw him banging on the deck there. I've seen that a few times from players where you think, hey, this could be something very serious. However, it appears, according to a post he's put out on social media, it isn't as serious as was first feared. So hopefully Scott McTominay can be back in the side soon. Got a lot of big games coming up. Got the Crystal Palace game on the horizon. You've also got the FA Cup final. You've got the Arsenal game as well. So there's big games coming up. You need Scott McTominay in the team, whether you're a big fan of him or not. He has been very effective for Manchester United this season. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there with his injury. Just one little quick one as well. We mentioned this on the Paddock podcast about this story that I referred to earlier about Ducker saying that basically everyone is for sale at Manchester United. So it's one to keep an eye on. That's an ongoing sort of story, that, isn't it? We've seen Ornstein mentioning Marcus Rashford. You'll see one or two other players, well, probably a whole host of players, being linked with moves to different clubs during the summer or as the summer approaches. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with Manchester United and what their stance is going to be and what Ineos's stance is going to be as well. But just before I wrap up, actually, there's one thing I want to talk about because it annoyed me. And I saw this morning, and it was a story. It's in a lot of the papers. I've seen it in there. I think I saw it in the Mail. I've seen it in one or two other papers. And it's Mark Lawrenson, who used to be on Match of the Day and Football Focus. You remember Mark Lawrenson? Now, he's done a podcast. He's been on a podcast. I think it's the Ben Heath podcast, where he spoke about why he left the BBC. And he said, I'm 65 and I'm white. That's why I got sacked, because it's all about, wokeism. And it infuriates me, this sort of nonsense that you hear from certain people that basically they lost the job because they're white. And Mark Lawrenson didn't lose his job because he's white. He lost his job because he probably got replaced by someone that's a bit more young and a bit more relevant. And I used to watch Mark Lawrenson a lot of the time. He wasn't the most engaging pundit, if I'm being brutally honest. And also the fact he's 65 indicates, okay, maybe it was time for someone who's a bit younger to come on. Someone who's played in the Premier League, someone who's played in the Champions League, someone who's played against some of the players that you're watching week in, week out. Doesn't just mean you lost your job because you're white. And I think there's a little bit of racism there where you're saying, well, it's just, wokeism and it's black people taking their jobs. And it annoys me and it infuriates me because I just think that sort of thing doesn't do anyone any favours. And I'm someone who's, listen, I've never played professional football. I studied journalism. I went back to uni to study journalism. I was a reporter for 10 years. I used to do YouTube. I appeared on a lot of YouTube channels. I worked hard on YouTube. We ended up buying the channel, a few of us, myself, Anna McCall, Stephen House and Joe Smith. We bought in lockdown, took a massive gamble, put a lot of effort and time into the channel. And because of that, I was afforded some opportunities. I was given opportunities on Football Focus. I was given opportunities on Sky Sports, on BT Sport, on 5 Live, on ITV. I wasn't giving them opportunities because I'm black. I was giving them opportunities because I worked hard and I tried, when I got these opportunities, to make the most of it. And that's the kind of thing I teach my kids. I don't say to them, well, you'll get a job because you're mixed race. That's not how the world works. And when I see people like Mark Lawrenson saying things like, I got sacked because I was white, It infuriates me because it's just the wrong attitude to have. And we all know why he's saying those sort of things. And I think he needs to stop being bitter, take a look at himself and get on with it. Anyway, apologies for that little rant, but it was something that just sort of annoyed me. I'm going to leave it there. Make sure you are hitting like, share and subscribe. I'm Jay Motty. Thanks for watching.